Yeah, okay, okay. Sometimes people say, bad times actually can create good things in life. Would you say that Russian sanctions have actually improved your life?
This is a very difficult question.
Because let's listen.
Oh.
There's two types of people. The people who wake up and do something when there's crisis.
Mm-hmm.
The people who close themselves inside and cry when there's crisis.
Right.
So,
yeah. No, I agree with that.
in
Right.
terms of that.
I mean, for me, the only thing that's literally affecting me, if I want to say if everything's affecting me, it's only the banking side of it. So
Yeah.
I was using my Australian credit card or debit cards here. My wages were going into Australian bank accounts, so I don't have access to the cards to pay for things.
Yeah.
So we've had to come up with a way of transferring money from Australia to Russia. So that's the one thing that's really, it pains me every day that
It's hard.
I can't just take my Australian card out of my wallet and pay for something.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I've still got to pay for it.
Yeah.
But now I basically, there was a point after February for a few months that I had to go and ask my wife for money. Like if I wanted to come for lunch now,
Yeah.
I'd have to ask to borrow money.
Because you couldn't get your
I
money
couldn't.
from-
I couldn't pay for it myself. I mean, okay, when we're married, we're sharing our accounts and money. But imagine it's like, Mum, can I have some money, please, to go for lunch? So I'd need to borrow, and I'd even just say to my wife, just give me enough for
Yes,
like
it's
a
true.
small meal, and I don't need lots of money. I don't need to have a full wallet when I come out. You know, I'm not intentionally going to spend all the money when I leave the house, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's the one thing that's.
Affected. Like,
We've figured out ways around it. You know, you can say, you know, there's obviously companies that have left Russia. So where you, okay, let's just say the word Pringles, a can of Pringles, the potato chips. So where you love Pringles, and then Pringles has left the Russian market.
yeah.
We're talking about can of Pringles, everybody.
Yeah.
They've gone. They're now not on the shelves, but now there's Russian brands
That came up and started making the same, testing the same.
very similar, yeah, very, very similar. And so there for every one that's left, there's 2 or 3 analogs.
Yeah.
I think they call it analogs
Yeah.
of
And
the.
do you think the sanctions actually are trying to make Russia more self-sufficient or something?
Yeah, I think Russia's had that for quite a lot of years, even going back to 2014, I think it was. Russia is a net exporter of food.
Yeah.
So they obviously produce a lot of grains, cereals, wheats for export.
Yeah.
So Russia basically
And corn too.
they negated all of this,
Yeah.
you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, which has basically put a bit of a dampening on what's happened now.
Yeah.
Obviously, sanctions against banking, against, you know, some of the major companies and import airlines and things like that are affected, but for you and I, we are only looking at what's affecting you and I, like
Yeah.
how it affects your family, how it
Yeah.
affects my wife and I, and that goes for anybody in Moscow here, you know.
But I think so. Sometimes the prices kind of felt like they went up, and then the ruble improved,
Yeah.
and then things kind of
Calm
stabilized
down,
up
yeah,
again.
right.
And I think now we're in that level of like, it's okay.
Yeah, you know,
Not
there's
much
still
difference.
some imported
Yeah.
goods that are higher because they're genuinely imported.
Have you seen the amount of Coca-Cola? The names.
It's like more. It was more than there was
Before
before.
there was 2. There was that cola and the Coca-Cola, yeah?
Yeah.
There is. Now we have, I think, is it 7 or 5? I don't know. I just went to the shop and I was like, there's so many Coca-Colas too. And all of them has a cola somewhere.
Right, yeah. So there's actually the thing that I you know, as a person that works in supermarkets in retail, it's actually good for the economy.
Yeah.
Because Russian businesses benefit from producing Russian products that are sold domestically. So, you know, the brand Chernogolovka, which is one of the major Russian
Actually,
brands.
it's my favorite cola now.
Yeah.
They
So-
have a cola. They started making cola. Now that is the only cola I can drink.
And so that kind of company has basically moved into the market where Pepsi and Coke have left. So, you know, it's just
So yeah, it's actually improving Russian companies, I think.
right, you know, and I mean, the countries that we're from originally, where we lived, like in Australia, we'd have that buy Australian aspect, right?
Yeah.
So if companies left Australia, Australian brands would then rise up underneath.
Yeah.
And we'd be able to buy Australian, you know, so...
Okay. Russell, would you advise expats to come to Moscow or at this juncture, at this time? Is it advisable for foreigners to come?
I mean, actually, from an Australian point of view, our Australian government is not advising us to travel to Russia, to Ukraine, to Belarus. Our Australian government has a website where you can see the risks of travel to every country in the world, actually. I mean, you have to adhere to that if you want to be, if anything happens and you want to rely on the help of the embassy or the consulate. I mean, I wouldn't tell anybody not to come if they've got at least a sense of adventure to come to a foreign country.
Or as you said, you know, you might find love in Russia. I mean, sometimes you just need to be with this person. Is it going to stop you? Like, you know, if you wanted to be with your wife, would you be stopped by what is happening now?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, now at this point, no. Like, you know, if I was to travel back to Australia, I'd travel back to Russia. I'd still travel back and forward. I mean, I understand the risks.
Yeah.
You know, and my wife and I, we've kind of talked through it about leaving Russia more than, you know, we talked about leaving versus staying here, and we're comfortable here. You know, I mean, if someone comes, I mean, obviously the biggest challenge with telling someone to come to Russia is the language. Yeah. You know what I mean? If you're willing to learn some Russian or, you know, understand Russian.
I was just coming to that question.
Oh, okay.
How is your Russian?
Yeah, my Russian is very, very bad. I'm going to be honest. It's...
Can you at least read?
No. Oh, a few words. I can get the few first letters of words, but I couldn't read a word.
Are you a person that learns languages quickly?
No. Very bad.
Me, I would say for the 12 years that I've been here, my Russian is not that good. But given that Russian is my fourth language.
Oh.
Yeah. English is my third language.
Oh.
So I know my mother tongue, Swahili, which is common in Kenya. Then there's English, and then there's Russian.
Wow.
I love languages, but Russian has just defeated me somehow. But I can write, I can read.
Wow, writing.
And I can understand most of it. But speaking, I think I haven't practiced on that. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest, you know, I guess there's a hurdle, if you like. I mean, don't let it stop you from coming here.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
people do speak English. You can find somebody anywhere you go. If you're stuck, you can ask, "Does anyone speak English?" And they'll even help you. I mean, where my wife and I go somewhere, obviously she'd do all the talking. But if I was coming out today, for instance, and I was really stuck on something, I'd go and ask somebody nearby, "Can you help me for?"
Actually, in Moscow, and that is only in Moscow. Maybe somewhere outside, people wouldn't actually understand anything. But mostly in Moscow, most people at least have a clue of some English and they can understand. Maybe they can't speak, but they will maybe help you with something, you know?
Yeah.
So, between Russia and Australia, where would you want to retire?
Oh, that's kind of tough because I don't think I've got to that point here where, you know, in Russia people have the country house, they've got a dacha in the regional areas of the city. I guess until we've got one of those and we've got that place to go to on the weekends or in the summertime, I don't have that thought in my head. I mean, obviously the weather in Australia year round is nice. Summers, you know, the life expectancy would be longer in Australia because of the weather, right? Yeah. So, where do I want to retire? I mean, my wife and I, this is one actually part of the question of us living here is, you know, we kind of made a bit of a pros and cons list about Australia, about Russia, and they almost balance each other out.
You kind of want to be going back and forth or something.
Yeah, I mean, okay, that's a lot of money to do that, flight and travel-wise and cost, but. You know what I mean? If you get the pros and cons list, one thing cancels out the other. There's not
like a striking.
No, right. You know, right. I mean, okay, you can always say where I'm from is my home, is my heart, but
visit once in a while, but still you're not sure whether it's going to be here. Yeah, I understand.
Yes.
Okay. What do you miss most in Australia?
What do I miss the most? I'm going to talk about always the same few things because One is my mum's home cooking.
Mhm.
Okay, in the time we were in Australia last year and before, my wife and I were living together, not with my parents, right? But just going around for that Sunday dinner or Sunday roast, we call it. And that one dish that, you know, your mum knows that she can cook for you and you're gonna love it no matter what.
Yeah.
Australian, there's a certain biscuit called a Tim Tam that I miss, that I cannot find in Russia.
And you can't make yourself.
No chance, not a way. That's, and I think I don't have a car here in Russia. So
He's driving or something?
yeah, I'm not driving every day here, but just like on a Saturday, jump in the car, go to the hardware store or go to a park, go to the shopping center, grab something and come home. Catching public transport I'm completely fine with, but you know, it's a bit of a half a day event to do something. You know, to go to the hardware store, we had to buy a chair recently. You know, go over there, choose the chair. We couldn't carry it in the bus, so we had it delivered to the house. But you know, it was an hour to get there, an hour to get home.
It's crazy.
You know, you could jump in the car normally, drive there, grab what you want, throw it in the back of the car, drive home. So I miss that.
Being that independent to be able to buy something in a store and actually take it home. I think most people in Moscow don't want to drive, but I would say like it's really when you have children, it's better to have a car. You know, whereby you can drop them somewhere. You know, you can do things quickly. You know, as a family or something.
Yeah. Whereas just some things like my wife going to the doctors in Australia, we just jump in the car, I'd take her to an appointment. Do her thing, I'd pick her up, bring her home. Now she's got to go all the way across Moscow.
Oh my god,
Go to the appointment time and come all the way back across Moscow. I mean, okay, the distances are a little bit different, but it'd just be more comfortable to sit in the car on the way home than think about the journey.
Okay. Do Australian people have stereotype when it comes to Russians? What do Australians think
drinking
of?
vodka, bears running around,
Oh my god.
the Cossack dancing, you know, those guys that Russians in sport, you know, Russians in the 90s and 80s. I mean, was there maybe any manipulation in the athletes? But Russia dominated sport for years and years
Were they
and years.
doping or something?
Oh, I can't.
Not sure.
No, but you know what's forgotten is the population of Russia. They've got the amount of people coming through the sporting system that they've got a never-ending supply of gymnasts, of let's say swimmers, water polo players, footballers, any
Skiing and
sports,
stuff.
right? Winter sports,
Hockey.
you know, and that's
they're good in hockey too.
yeah. So there's there was that domination, you know, but purely because there was that many athletes pushing through, and that's stereotypical. Like the Russians are always going to be up there in the sporting events. Yeah, the Russians, the Americans. You're like,
competing, like, you know.
and you know, no matter how hard you know how successful you think Australia is, then Russia still beats them. I'm like, come on. But now I'm here. I'm like, oh, now Russia. Well, now at the moment not, but Russia can just dominate
No,
us.
it's your team, actually. You know?
By default.
Yes.
So.
Okay. As a foreigner, Russell, how do Russians treat you? Like in general, when you go to a store somewhere and they realize you're a foreigner, how do they?
I think they're mostly surprised. Like even in the town where I live, you know, and I meet somebody new for the first time,
But
they're
you look
like,
so Russian. Actually, people.
no.
People
Okay,
might-
when we're wearing our jacket and our
Oh,
beanie and gloves,
Let me
and
say like so, because you know what, people might think, you know, you just Russian and you know.
if you
Get
don't
surprised when you start speaking.
speaking, right? I mean, I get that a lot though. You're from Australia? What are you doing in Russia?
Like when I saw you first, you know, in that cafe, I was like, look, Russian. I'm afraid. Is he the one? You know, there was not like distinct. Like,
right?
You know,
Yeah,
story.
fair enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
yeah, it's yeah.
do they like? Is it surprise or?
Yeah, I think most of them mostly like, what are you doing in Russia? What are you doing in Russia now? You know, once I explain that I'm married here, I live here, that it's kind of calms down a little bit, that excitement. But there's still that kind of, I could have chosen anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
You know, why are you in Russia? You know, there's a lot of Russians who don't hold the country as like in their heart. Like, I came to Russia because I've grown to love Russia.
They're
and
even
I'm here.
surprised. That
Right,
you
yeah.
love Russia.
And, you know,
I think they're used to Western really diminishing them as
right.
the
Yeah.
Russians and talking bad stuff about them. I think there are some people it's gotten in their head, and maybe that's why they're
Yeah.
surprised when they see a foreigner. Do you find it hard finding friends in Russia?
I think purely because we don't live close to each other in Moscow region. We don't live as close to each other. If I have my friends that I have, I've got a couple of neighbors that I'm now interact with and meet or chat with. But meeting somebody on the bus or the train is very. Especially at first when you meet somebody, they're very closed kind of people. And it takes a little bit of time just to warm up. I mean, my character's very bubbly, you can see that. And, when somebody also likes that, it's like an instant connection, but not necessarily...
Most Russians, I think they are within, like they need time, a lot of time
Right.
to get to know you.
Yeah,
And,
it's very reserved and not, even when I was in line for the bus last night going home, I was in Moscow yesterday, and I was having a bit of a laugh with the girl standing behind me, and then slowly we just had a little conversation. We sat down next to each other on the bus, and by the end of the bus trip, we were like chatting away. But she probably never expected to meet an Australian guy in line at the bus stop, right? And her chance to speak English as well, right? It's like a bit of a bonus.
Okay. I think I'm in my last or something. Is there one thing you hate about Russia?
All right, so now I'm going to correct your question for a minute because I don't like the word hate.
Yeah.
And my wife...
But sometimes you just have something that you hate and don't like, or maybe you don't like.
No, so I use the word heavily dislike.
Heavily.
No, so you've got to say now, is there anything in Russia you heavily dislike?
Yeah, is there anything in Russia you heavily dislike?
Actually, we talked about this before before we did the start of the video about traffic and cars and people's driving habits. And I feel like every time I catch the bus from my town to the metro or into Moscow, I feel like I'm putting my life in the driver's hands for 20 minutes because you just don't know, like the drivers and their abilities. That's the one thing where in Australia I would always trust a bus driver, a policeman, a fireman, a truck driver, a long distance bus driver, for instance. You know that they're a professional in their trade and their but here you get on the road and you're like
trembling.
There's not a lot of things I dislike about Russia. There's a lot of things that are not the same as where I'm from. Maybe for you as well. But here in Russia, people just get on with life. You know what I mean? They're not up and complaining about simple things like, right, so that where we're sitting here, this table has got a wonky leg, right? So if that was America, or maybe Australia, someone would complain to management of the shopping center.
This is not working.
And here in Russia, we'd still sit here if it was full. We'd just choose another table and no worries, And there's just less worry about things here. Like everything that might not be right. It's Russian style, Russian living, lifestyle. So.
I would add to that. I don't like that they are so closed. It's sad to say that my next door neighbor in apartment, I don't know. I've never even entered their apartment. I haven't talked to them. If this were to be Kenya, oh my God, the amount of vodka we've been drunken together.
Actually, this is probably like the same for Australia, right? I mean,
are Australians not friendly or something?
I mean, when I was at home last year, where we were renting our apartment in Rockingham, I mean, within the first day or two, I was meeting my neighbours. I was going around there; they were coming around to me. We're just sharing our background and story, and they're always there to knock on the door. Like, even if we maybe don't share similar interests, but we've got that just Australian friendly mentality, I guess. Whereas here, everybody's not really smiling and happy when you look at them in their faces. I mean, maybe over time they grow to be happier.
Next time they won't be happy immediately when you meet them, but with Russians you need some little bit of time. They need to gain your trust.
Right.
Without that, oh my
Right.
God, you can't even come hugging or saying hello to somebody.
Right.
It's, in Kenya, you just, say hi to everything that is walking on the streets, So yeah, with that said, guys, thank you so much for actually watching up to this point. And Russell, thank you so much for actually making time to come. And I know now your YouTube channel is going crazy. You're going to be a busy person, and you're actually busy. But you know what? You find your time and you come, share very amazing information in my
Story
channel.
and-
And thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Please tell my people where to find you in Instagram
Oh.
and in YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to look up the YouTube channel, Traveling with Russell, it should come up as one of the first suggestions, I think. I don't really use that picture app that you just mentioned.
Instagram?
I don't use it.
You don't
My
use any
wife
other?
loves it. No.
You don't use any other?
Telegram. And
Oh my-
if anyone has Telegram, maybe you don't. It's not very well known outside of
Yeah,
Russia. I have Traveling with Russell channel, where I post photographs and what I'm doing day to day. It's very small.
Oh, the other thing I wanted to say, guys, if you want collaborations, if you want, you can interview me, you can interview Russell. Please, feel free to say, hey, let's do something, let's collaborate, let's, I really want, especially English-speaking YouTubers in Russia.
Yep.
Please, if you want to connect, if you want to support each other, come together and connect and create content like this. I really, really enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Very welcome. Yeah,
So-
so don't forget, like
Like,
and subscribe to the channel as well, right? Maybe
Yeah.
some of the new viewers watching
yeah.
aren't subscribed, so if you
Yeah.
want to check out some of your other videos,
Yeah.
your family,
There's so much there, by the way. I have so many videos.
you're like an onion
Yeah.
to peel back
I'm
the
everywhere.
onion, right?
I'm doing everything. Okay, thank you so much, guys, and paka paka.
Bye.